Hey, welcome. So today I'm going to discuss the learning resources versus Trump case. Is a case about the IEEPA tariffs, and I'll be making a prediction on how the Supreme Court is likely to rule on the case. So without wasting too much time, let's start. All right. So there is absolutely no question that the Supreme Court is likely to rule that the tariffs are legal. Okay. And I'll be making this point by looking at the evidence post oral argument. So there was an oral argument on November 5th, 2025. After the oral argument, right, there's this clear evidence indicating that the Supreme Court is likely to rule that the tariffs are legal. So before I get into the specifics of that, I want to discuss the status quo, the current status quo. I want to discuss the filing of the case, the petition, when the petition was filed. I want to sort of have the statement, all right, so the preview into my argument, okay? So the status quo. What is the status quo, right? The status quo as it exists today is that the IEEPA tariffs are legal. We would take a look at what is currently going on. A couple of weeks ago, actually, it was it last week or 2 weeks ago, Donald Trump threatened European countries, France, UK, and other countries in Europe, tariffs. So, and there was a huge news about it, commotion about it, people were going crazy. The tariffs that Trump threatened were the IEEPA tariffs. So everybody knows that IEEPA tariffs are legal right now because the lower courts' decisions, which pretty much said that IEEPA tariffs are illegal, has already been stayed. So they don't mean anything right now. So tariffs currently is legal. And by the way, $300 billion, 300 would it be? $300 billion has already been collected with respect to the IEEPA tariffs. Okay. And the second point, I want to expand a little bit about sort of the case, right? So the government, the Trump administration, filed a case with the Supreme Court on September 3rd, 2025. That's when the petition was filed. On the same day that the petition was filed, a motion to expedite the petition was also filed. And within that motion, majority of the argument that were made was that if the Supreme Court were to rule the tariffs are illegal, the messiness that will result as a result of the refund process, all right, because of that messiness, the motion said, or the motion asked the Supreme Court to expedite the case, okay? And if you read the petition or sort of the motion, you would have that explained, okay? It's very important. Okay, so I'm going to read this right here. In addition, the longer a final ruling is delayed, the greater the risk of economic disruption. This is, by the way, coming in from Bassett. All right, so it's a quote. For example, delaying a ruling until June 2026 could result in a scenario in which $750 billion to $1 trillion in tariffs have already been collected, and unwinding them could cause significant disruptions. Moreover, the frameworks for trade agreements already in place contain additional provisions whereby the trade partners agree to significant purchases from and or investments in the United States. If these agreements upon if these agreed upon frameworks were unwound and the investment and purchases had been repaid, the economic consequences would be catastrophic. Okay? So within the motion to expedite, some of the many arguments that were raised was, hey, if the tariffs are illegal, all the trade frameworks that we've already sort of agreed with other countries will go down to tubes, right? The refund process would be messy. So guess what? Hurry up and rule on the case. Okay. So guess what happened? Few days later, it wasn't a week. Well, actually, about less than a week. 1 day less than a week. Guess what happened? The Supreme Court accepted it. Right? The Supreme Court accepted it. When the Supreme Court accepted the case, those tariffs were those decisions, the lower court decisions were already stayed. Okay, they were already stayed. And guess what? The Supreme Court could have acted on its own. So as spote, right? That's a legal term. Could have acted to stay that decision of the lower court to stay its opinion. They could have said, hey, pause the tariff collection while we decide this case. And indeed, the Supreme Court Chief Justice Roberts, made this exact point. Okay.
And one thing is quite clear is that the foreign-facing tariffs have in several situations.
Right, and we are.
But they're a foreign-facing tax, right? And that foreign affairs is a core power of the executive. And I don't think you can dismiss the consequences. I mean, we didn't stay this case, and one thing is quite clear is that the foreign-facing tariffs have in several situations.
Right, and we are.
I'm sorry.
All right. That's right there. That's right over there. Okay. They did not stay this case. Look, read it. I mean, we didn't stay this case. They did not stay this case. They didn't stay the tariffs. Okay. And another justice also sort of relayed or gave credence to the urgency of the case, right? And that is Justice Barrett. And that is 206. I'm going to play that real quick. 206.
Dealing with this with quotas, there's no refund.
Constitutional power coming from the law of war. Okay. And then if you win, tell me how the reimbursement process would work. Would it be a complete mess? I mean, you're saying before the government promised reimbursement, and now you're saying, oh, well, that's rich. But how would this work? It seems to me like it could be a mess.
So the first thing I'd say is that...
Bingo. Bingo. Bingo.
Awesome.
All right. Awesome. Right? It's going to be a mess if the tariff challengers were to win. Which sort of highlights the urgency of the case. The urgency. Okay? Most commentators were expecting a decision maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks after the oral argument. Everybody was expecting it. Guess what? We are currently in we're getting into the 4th month after oral arguments. It's been 5 months now since the case or the petition was filed, right? Was filed on September 3rd. More than 5 months. Get into, 6 months. There's no question. Everybody agrees. If a decision will be coming out saying that IEEPA tariffs are illegal, if that were to be the case, everybody knows that's a disruption to the status quo. Absolutely, it's a disruption. It's a disruption to the status quo. So, if that is the case, it will lead to a lot of messiness. As a result, everybody expected the Supreme Court to rule quickly. if they were going to rule that the tariffs are illegal. Okay. And please don't tell me that, oh, the Supreme Court was busy. Now. Absolutely not. All right. Supreme Court was busy? Are you kidding me? The Supreme Court released a total of 10 opinions after the oral arguments on November 5th, 2025. If the Supreme Court was really, really busy over, you know, they wouldn't be doing this. They just treat post oral arguments. They've been treating the tariff case as a normal case. It's like, okay. Which, again, highlights the point. It highlights the point that they're likely to rule that the tariffs are legal. All right. So that is my point. That is my point. Okay. And if you have any other objection to this point that I pretty much raised, I think these are valid points. Just let me know. Let me know. All right. So we can, discuss and laugh about it. So this would pretty much be it. And thank you for listening. And let's trade. Stay blessed.